A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Chapter 3. The second of the three spirits. Scrooge woke up in the middle of a snore, just before the clock struck one again. He felt he had woken right in the nick of time, for the special purpose of holding a conference with the second messenger. A ghostly light led him to the next room, and with his hand upon the lock, he heard a strange voice call him by name and bid him enter. He obeyed. It was his own room. There was no doubt about that. But it had undergone a surprising transformation. It was decorated with sprigs of holly, mistletoe, and ivy, and a roasting fire that blazed brightly up the chimney. Heaped upon the floor, to form a kind of throne, were turkeys, geese, game, poultry, brawn, great joints of meat, long wreaths of sausages, mince pies, plum puddings, red-hot chestnuts, cherry-cheeked apples, juicy oranges, and luscious pears. In easy state upon this couch there sat a jolly giant, glorious to see. It was clothed in one simple green robe, bordered with white fur. On its head it wore a holly wreath, set here and there with shining icicles. Its dark brown curls were long and free as its kind voice, its sparkling eye, its open hands, its joyful air. Come in, and know me better, man. I am the ghost of Christmas present. Spirit, said Scrooge submissively, conduct me where you will. I went forth last night through force, and I learnt a lesson which is working now. So tonight, if you have anything to teach me, let me profit by it. The room vanished instantly, and they stood in the city streets on Christmas morning, where people were shoveling the snow from in front of their houses. Despite the gloomy sky and their obvious poverty, the people were jovial and full of glee. They were calling out to one another, and now and then exchanging a flying snowball. The ghost took Scrooge to Bob Cratchit's house, a very poor little dwelling. On the threshold of the door, the spirit blessed the house with a little of his magic. In the kitchen you could see Mrs. Cratchit preparing Christmas dinner, with potatoes bubbling merrily on the stove. Her children were cheerfully running round. Mrs. Cratchit was watching the clock. Then the door opened, and Bob Cratchit came in with Tiny Tim upon his shoulders. Tiny Tim was Bob Cratchit's youngest son. He bore a little crutch and had an iron frame around his limb. As the children ran off to play and to sneak a look at the boiling Christmas pudding, Mrs. Cratchit came close to her husband. And how did little Tib behave? As good as gold, said Bob, and better. Somehow he gets thoughtful, sitting by himself so much, and thinks the strangest things you ever heard. He told me, coming home, that he hoped people saw him in the church, because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. Bob's voice trembled as he said that Tim was growing strong and hearty. His crutches could be heard upon the stone floor, and he was led by his siblings to sit at the table before another word was spoken. Bob turned up his cuffs, as if, poor fellow, they were capable of being made shabbier, and began to help with the preparations. The goose was fetched and brought in with high procession. Such a bustle ensued that you might have thought a goose the rarest of all birds, like a feathered phenomenon, and in truth it was a rarity in the Cratchit's house. Finally, the dishes were set and grace was said. As the family joyfully ate and felt of the Christmas spirit, Scrooge turned to the ghost of Christmas present. Then Christmas dinner was ready and everyone sat down at the table. As the Cratchits were very poor, it was not much they had for Christmas dinner, but still everyone was joyful, and you could feel that they had all the Christmas spirit in their hearts. "Spirit," said Scrooge, who felt sorry for the boy. "Tell me if Tiny Tim will live." "I see an empty seat," replied the ghost, "and a crutch without an owner. If these shadows don't change in the future, the child will die." "No, no," said Scrooge. "Oh no, kind spirit, say he will be spared." "What do you care? If he's going to die, he had better do it quickly and decrease the surplus population." Scrooge hung his head to hear his own words quoted by the spirit, and was overcome with regret and grief. Bob lifted his glass of punch. "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us," said Bob Cratchit. "God bless us, everyone," said Tiny Tim. He sat very close to his father's side upon his little stool. Bob held his little hand as if he feared to lose him. "Enter the founder of the feast," said Bob to Mr. Scrooge. "Founder of the feast? Ha!" said Mrs. Cratchit. "If Scrooge were here, I'd give him a piece of my mind. I'm sure he's very comfortable today, no doubt. I'll drink to his health for your sake, but not for his." Scrooge was the ogre of the family. The mention of his name cast a dark shadow on the party, which was not dispelled for full 5 minutes. This made Scrooge very sad, but the spirit began to lead him away from the house. Scrooge had his eye upon the family, and especially Tiny Tim, to the last. The spirit took Scrooge to his nephew's house. It is a truth well known that while there is infection and disease and sorrow, there is nothing in the world so irresistibly contagious as laughter and good humour. When Scrooge's nephew laughed, his wife laughed as heartily as he, and their assembled friends too roared out loudly. When Scrooge and the spirit arrived, all of them were laughing merrily, holding their sides. He said that Christmas was a humbug, as I live," cried Scrooge's nephew. "He believed it too." "More shame for him, Fred," said his wife indignantly. "He's a comical old fellow, and not so pleasant as he might be. Didn't you say he was very rich?" "What of it?" replied Fred. "His wealth is of no use to him, because he does no good with it. Who suffers from his ill whims? Himself always. Here he has decided to dislike us, and won't come and dine with us. What's the consequence? Only he is alone and miserable on Christmas. He loses some pleasant moments by not making merry with us, and loses pleasant companions. I mean to give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not. for I pity him. He may rail at Christmas every year, but if he finds me always in a good mood, then perhaps he may be reached." The guests all joined in with Blind Man's Buff, singing as Fred's wife played the harp, and making guesses in games. Scrooge even made his own guesses, though none of them could see or hear him. Then Fred toasted to his Uncle Scrooge's health, wherever he was, and Scrooge felt light of heart and wistful. The ghost was greatly pleased to find him in this mood, and looked upon him with much favour. He led Scrooge away, and they were on their travels again. Much they saw, and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. The spirits stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful. He showed Scrooge struggling men, and they were made patient. They saw the poor, but they felt rich. The ghost blessed each place with the joy of Christmas, and Scrooge was touched. Scrooge did not change outwardly, but the ghost did. He grew older, clearly older, with every passing minute. Scrooge noticed the ghost's hair had turned grey. "Are spirits' lives so short?" asked Scrooge. "My life upon this globe is very brief," replied the ghost. "It ends tonight." Suddenly, Scrooge noticed something else strange about the ghost. Two childlike figures were at the ghost's feet, a boy and a girl, but they looked old and dreadful, like little monsters. Where graceful youth should have filled out their features and touched them with its freshest tints, a stale and shriveled hand like that of age had pinched and twisted them and pulled them into shreds. Scrooge was shocked. "Spirit, are they your creatures?" Scrooge asked. "They are man's creatures," said the spirit. "The boy is ignorance, the girl is want. Beware them both, but most of all beware this boy, for I see doom written upon him." "Have they no place they can go?" asked Scrooge. "Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?" the spirit said, turning Scrooge's own words upon him again. The bell struck 12. The ghost of Christmas present disappeared. On the last stroke of the bell, Scrooge saw the third ghost, draped and hooded, coming towards him like a mist along the ground.